Hi everyone, and a warm welcome back to Mindsprout Books, the channel where we explore holistic self-development through the wisdom of books. Have you ever been in this situation? When someone scolds or accuses you, the more you try to explain, the more they think you're just making flimsy excuses. When you hear a dissenting opinion and try to prove you're not wrong, you're dismissed as being unreasonable, and the outcome is always the opposite of what you intended. The initial goal is to help others understand, but in the endless cycle of arguments and self-defense, we diminish our own credibility and drain our energy, yet still can't escape the other person's suspicion or criticism. This leads from frustration to quarrels, and ultimately, the conflict creates cracks in our relationships that can never be mended. In psychology, this is called the self-verification trap. It means the more you try to prove and explain, I'm right, I have a reason, I'm innocent, the more others will think you're wrong, unreasonable, and guilty. Over 100 years ago, the master of the short story, Guy de Maupassant, clearly illustrated the harm of falling into this paradox in his story, A Piece of String. Maupassant said that others' misunderstandings are like a rope that binds you. The more you care and defend yourself, the tighter the rope becomes, slowly suffocating you in a cloud of self-doubt and exhaustion. Today, I want to share with you a message titled, Don't Try to Explain Yourself, inspired by Guy de Maupassant's short story. The goal is to help us reflect on whether we're caught in this self-verification trap and how to make wiser choices in how we treat ourselves and others. Now let's dive in. The main character, Mr. Han, is a farmer who has lived his whole life pinching pennies. He couldn't bear to throw anything away. Even his most worn-out clothes and shoes were patched up and reused. One day, on his way to the town market, he spotted a small piece of string on the ground. Being a man accustomed to poverty, he immediately thought of the many uses for it and quickly bent down to pick it up, carefully rolling it to put away. As he was admiring his find, he accidentally met the gaze of Mandy, a man with whom he had a long-standing feud over the livestock trade. Not wanting his rival to see him stooping to pick up a tiny piece of string, he quickly hid it in his coat and pretended to look for something else on the ground. Then he walked towards the market, head held high, but his back slightly hunched in shame. After wandering through the market, he stopped at an inn to rest, where everyone was talking about someone who had lost their wallet. As he listened intently, 2 police officers suddenly appeared and took him to the police station for questioning. It turned out his rival had reported him, claiming he was the one who found the wallet. Mr. Han cried out that he was being framed. Panicked, he pulled out the piece of string to defend himself and demanded the officers search him. Finding nothing, the police temporarily released him, telling him to wait for a summons. But as soon as he stepped out of the station, curious onlookers surrounded him, eager for details. He had no choice but to show the string, explain everything, and turn his pockets inside out to prove they were empty. Hearing his story, the crowd just roared with laughter. No one believed him. Furious, he led them to the spot where he found the string and reenacted the entire event. Still, they just shook their heads and jeered. "Stop pretending, you old fox." Not knowing what else to do, he walked around town, explaining his story to every person he met. He talked from morning till night, until he was completely exhausted, but he couldn't wash away their suspicion. Just as he was at his lowest, news spread through the town. A farmhand had confessed to the police that he was the one who had found the wallet and had already returned it to its owner. Upon hearing the news, Mr. Hahn felt a wave of relief. He ran out of his house, joyfully proclaiming his innocence to everyone. But to his dismay, the rumors only grew more absurd. Some speculated he was the mastermind who had paid the farmhand to take the fall for him. Others suspected he and the farmhand were accomplices who only returned the money after their plot was exposed. The gossip was suffocating. He couldn't eat or sleep and lost all will to continue farming. From then on, he spent his days wandering the village, telling anyone who would listen about the injustice he had suffered. But people only laughed cruelly, pointed at him, and whispered to each other, "He's just a liar making excuses." Like a deflating balloon, the farmer withered under the torment of the rumors. His spirit broke, his body weakened, and he eventually died in despair. Why did the old man go to such lengths to explain himself? You'll notice that from the very beginning, when he hid the string out of shame, to his desperate attempts to clear his name, all his actions stemmed from a deep-seated fear. He didn't want others to see him as poor. In reality, just like the old man, we often face moments when we are misunderstood or blamed by others. Instinctively, most of us want to immediately explain or clarify. Fearing misunderstanding, we go out of our way to please others, trying everything to make them see us in a positive light. In truth, every time you rush to defend and prove yourself, your reaction reveals one thing. You are trying to protect your own large ego, and you are also trying to hide a certain weakness or insecurity deep down. This is why you can't accept others' opinions. Doing so feels like a threat to your ego, so you have to fight back to immediately express your own thoughts, as if life is only complete when you have others' approval. But as the author of Conversations with God so rightly said, as long as you are worried about what others think of you, you are owned by them. In the face of blame and accusation, all your reactions are futile. Explanations will be seen as excuses. The more you try to defend yourself, the more ridiculous you appear to others. The piece of string the old man used to explain himself is a symbol of the truth we so desperately try to protect. But in the eyes of others, it's just nonsense. The more you cling to it, the more that string becomes a noose around your neck. And when a noose tightens, the more you struggle, the tighter it gets, until you can no longer breathe. The best thing to do in that moment is to stop struggling. But how? The answer is to be still. We often think that silence is weakness, an admission of guilt or agreement with others' judgments. But that's not true at all. Silence is the most powerful form of rebuttal. Only those with a strong inner core can remain still when facing any external reaction. But what kind of stillness builds inner strength, rather than just being a form of avoidance or escape? 1. When misunderstood, you don't need to justify yourself. There's a story about a painter at an exhibition in England who held water in his mouth and sprayed it onto his paper. As he was finishing a peony painting, someone in the crowd scoffed loudly. "You call spitting water on paper art? How ridiculous." All eyes turned to the painter, but he simply smiled, said nothing, and continued working on his piece. Later, someone asked him, "That was clearly a sophisticated ink wash technique. You could have shut them up with just a few words. Why didn't you explain?" The painter replied, "If that person truly cared about art, they would understand without an explanation. And if they don't truly care, no amount of explaining would make them understand." Everyone's perception is different. We cannot avoid misunderstandings and disagreements. When someone understands you, you don't need to say much for them to get your point. But for someone who doesn't understand you, no matter what you say, you'll only create more conflict. Dale Carnegie once said, "The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it." Remember, there are many times in life when constantly explaining who you are is pointless, because some people only want to hear what they want to hear and see what they want to see. Someone with a strong inner self doesn't need to argue about who is right or wrong. As the saying goes, from a mountaintop, you see the vast ocean, but from halfway up, you only see a desolate landscape. Everyone is at a different level of awareness, with different ways of thinking, and even different visions and statures. So, of course, they will see things differently. Sometimes not arguing and not refuting is the highest form of respect for yourself and for the other person. When you remain silent, you can de-escalate a tense atmosphere and avoid making more trouble for yourself. Typically, only a fragile ego needs to live by the opinions of others and constantly prove itself. Truly strong people don't need to cater to others' value systems. They just need to focus on doing their own thing well. 2. When faced with doubt, don't fuel your own self-doubt. Besides refuting others, many people tie their own ropes by refuting themselves. The moment they are doubted, they immediately blame themselves. For instance, a small mistake at work sends them into a spiral of guilt and despair. A minor issue at home makes them blame themselves for not caring enough for their family. Seeing their partner's disappointment, they constantly think they are weak and incapable of giving them a better life. In the book I've mentioned before, A Day Toad Went to See a Psychologist, it says, "No criticism is more powerful than self-criticism, and no judge is harsher than ourselves." Stop the self-criticism. Accept your strengths and weaknesses, and pull yourself out of the swamp of self-doubt. When you no longer doubt yourself, no definition or conclusion from anyone else can ever hurt you. 3. When in hardship, don't air your grievances. When misunderstood, many people love to complain and seek validation from others, hoping for understanding and comfort. There's a saying, never complain to anyone. 80% of people don't care, and the other 20% are glad you have problems. I often hear people say things like, "Ugh, I dread getting a call from so-and-so." Every time they vent, it's hours of crying and complaining. If you were that friend, would you still want to call that person to share your troubles? You might think, "What a terrible friend, judging me behind my back. I'll just find someone else to talk to next time." But how do you know the next person won't think the same? Anyone might be willing to listen the first few times, but if you are constantly complaining, do you think they might start to feel burdened and avoid you? When I made a short video titled "Never Tell Others Your Troubles," some people commented that my view was too extreme, that sometimes we need to confide in a close friend. Many people believe that a good friend is someone who is always ready to listen, and they see confiding and complaining as two different things. But have you noticed? The word confide implies sharing things from the heart. If your heart is full of nothing but misery, then your attempt to confide has already turned into complaining. I know everyone faces difficulties, but to others, our pain often isn't that important. And nobody enjoys constantly absorbing negative energy. In life, if you complain, "My colleagues are bullying me," someone will inevitably think, "What did you do to make them dislike you?" If you tell someone your husband treats you poorly and you want a divorce, they might think, "There must be a reason he acts that way." It's not that people are malicious. It's because humans are creatures of reason. We tend to believe that where there's smoke, there's fire. No one can live your life for you, so their opinions will always be subjective, and they might even backfire and hurt you more deeply. Therefore, don't broadcast your ups and downs. Silently cultivate a state of calm in the face of all difficulties. Read more books to enrich your mind and inner world. When you become strong, you will naturally fear no hardship and can face it with equanimity. And certainly, no injustice will ever become a rope that can bind you. 4. When you face criticism, you don't need to be upset. The next rope you might be clinging to is the criticism and judgment of others. In life, we often encounter baffling people who excel at putting others down, trying to pull you into their vortex of negativity. You reason with them, you present the facts, but they act as if they see nothing. Then there are those who love to give advice based on their own subjective opinions. When you enjoy reading, there's always someone who scoffs at you for being a pseudo-intellectual. When you exercise, someone will say, "You must have a lot of free time to be playing sports." Even when you want to pursue higher education or study abroad, there will always be someone advising, "Why study so hard? What's the point? It's better to just get a job or start a business and make money." When dealing with people like this, it's incredibly difficult to explain to them the joy of learning, the benefits of exercise, or the fulfillment of self-improvement. Because they have never experienced it and are not willing to, no matter how eloquent you are, they won't understand. The more you explain, the more you reveal your own lack of conviction and self-confidence. In the face of judgment or criticism, many people feel resentful and upset. Some try to change themselves to fit others' opinions. If you feel resentful, you might fall into the cycle of complaining or even develop depression. If you chase after society's approval and change yourself, you will always be the one who loses in the end, wasting time and emotional energy. Then there are those who, upon hearing criticism, immediately argue back or attack the other person's weaknesses. But arguments usually have only two outcomes. One, the other person retaliates, causing conflict and hatred. Or two, you get dragged down to their miserable level, tightening the rope around your own neck. The truth is, we don't need to expect to see eye to eye with everyone or to please them all. One writer put it perfectly when dealing with a malicious colleague's insults. "He insults me every day, which shows he can't live without me in his life. But I don't pay him any mind, which shows I can live without him in mine." Talk to people who understand you. Share your life philosophy with those who get it. Don't waste your breath on people who are on a different wavelength. You simply can't wake someone up who doesn't want to be woken. Let them awaken on their own path. Let go of the fragile sensitivity you feel when hearing sharp words from others. Staying silent, turning away, and refusing to be hurt by them is the smartest choice. In reality, the rope that Maupassant wrote about is everywhere. It is the baseless rumors and the harsh criticisms of our daily lives. If you let these ropes bind you, they will squeeze you in a suffocating grip, leading to collapse and self-destruction. Most of the pain in life comes from caring too much about what others think and always wanting to present a perfect, grand ego to the world. The writer Saint-Mao once said, "Your explanation of me doesn't represent even 1/10,000th of who I am, but it is a complete reflection of who you are." Others' judgments and criticisms are just one-sided opinions. They cannot affect your life, nor can they define your character. Be the master of your own self. You don't need to pay attention to the noise outside, nor do you need to force anyone to validate you. In the face of all misunderstandings, insults, and irrationality, silence is the most powerful response for you and for me. May the stillness build a powerful inner world for you. Let yourself know that it's time to untie these invisible ropes. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who might need it. Give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and ring the notification bell to catch our new videos every week. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.